lead.
Well, I think if we're going to RFQ says we don't have to.
Right.
I think both. I have to look at it, and it depends on what sport. Look at that last sport. There's clearly one. It's almost 3 out of 4 picking it number one.
Okay.
We should have some consensus. We have somebody that's that much higher. They may not even talk to each other. Because they're going to do survey stuff down there with them already, but when I talk to them, they can't get together. So that's the first thing we're going to have is what can we consolidate.
Hi, Danny. I see you're online. Do we want to do a sound check here for you?
And then, the other
Okay, can you hear me?
how much,
Yeah, sounding good. Thank you.
make sure we get this done after the vote.
Right.
I think that Jenny, I think she's pretty new. Yeah, I think when every time I talk to her, it takes like a week to get a response, and it's always someone else sees it. I think she's kind of new.
Yeah, I'm not talking.
She's on your contacts. So.
Thanks, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of this one, which is.
Sorry, Mayor.
You're not late yet. You're not late yet. Better hustle.
Oh, it did this last week, let me tell you.
It's 7 o'clock. I would like to call the February 16th DeSoto City Council meeting to order. We'll start with roll call, please.
Daniels? Here. Michael?
Here.
Ritter?
Here.
Lane?
Here.
Murdoch?
Here.
All are present.
All right. I would invite you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, tonight on our agenda, before we start our regular agenda, we have a number of public hearing items, 5 to be exact. So, Mike, are you going to introduce these
Yeah.
items, and then we'll introduce them individually, and then we'll hold a public hearing on each item on its own?
And Mayor, I need to disclose a conflict on the first 2 public hearing items, so I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay.
I will leave my device connected to the meeting, but I will leave it out.
Okay. Did you note all that?
Yes.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Mayor. So just by way of introduction for those in the room, we have 5 different public hearings. So each one will be opened. We'll take public comment. We'll close each one individually. The applicants for the first 2 are in common, and their representatives of that applicant are in the room. Applicants for the final 3 are also in the room. Procedurally, we'll open the public hearings. We'll take public comment, close those public hearings, and then action on those items does not occur until under new business items 4C and 4D and 4E. So that's when the applicants will be asked to come up and give any information they may have. Council will have further discussion and take action if appropriate at that time. We do have online the city's bond counsel, Kevin Wimpy, is online, and also our financial advisor, Jeff White, is also on the call. Kevin assisted us in the formation of the documents involved here, and Jeff did the cost-benefit analysis on these requests. So, with that out of the way, I'll introduce the first public hearing item. This is related to the issuance of $135 million in industrial revenue bonds and a requested 80% property tax abatement for Flint Meadows East. This project generally is located along 103rd Street, directly west of Clearview City, on a portion of 79 acres. It's a mix of multifamily and attached townhome project. So with that, Mayor, I'll invite you to open the public hearing.
All right. So with that introduction, I will officially open the public hearing related to the tax abatement and IRB industrial revenue bonds for Flint Meadows East. Public hearing is open. If you would like to speak to this issue, please approach the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening, Charlotte O'Hara, 15712 Windsor Street, Overland Park. I'm here as an individual. I'm not here as a county commissioner. And I have been told by our chief legal counsel that I need to make that very clear. I own a couple of industrial buildings in Olathe, 10,000 square foot and a 15,000 square foot. And I am not going to argue with anyone about the problem of high property taxes, because it is an issue. But it's not just an issue for new construction, it's an issue for all of us. And with these tax incentives, especially on the county taxes, I will be asked as an individual taxpayer, not only on my commercial buildings, but on my individual home, that I will be subsidizing the cost for services of these projects. On a $135 million project, and approximately with 136.75 mils, the property taxes on that would be generally $2.1 million, and at 80%, the reduction would be nearly $1.7 million. This is new. This is really pretty new territory for industrial revenue bonds to be issued for residential, and I understand all of the reasoning behind it. But the problem is that this is a transfer of wealth. It's a transfer of wealth of the existing tax base that they're going to have to pay for the services that these residential developments are going to incur. It's always been a rule of thumb that residential does not pay for itself. They are assessed at 11.5% instead of the 25% on commercial and industrial. And so as always, that typically that these industrial revenue bonds were on commercial and industrial projects. I also would encourage the City Council to look at the 2022 legislative post-audit report. It said, and these were all on industrial projects. None of the 8 industrial revenue bonds we reviewed will generate tax revenues returns high enough to offset their exemptions amount. The research literature on property tax exemption effectiveness is mixed. Another quote is that approximately only about 20% on industrial or on tax incentives is actually the driver of businesses choosing to do business in a specific area. You're a small community, 6,380 residents, and your mill levy is high. And the burden that's going to be on the existing tax base is going to be problematic in my opinion. And I just hope that as you go forward that you will take into consideration that people that are here now, they're suffering with high property taxes. And how is it that people, the new kids on the block, they come in and they're going to get an 80% property tax abatement while your residents that are here are going to have to pay full till. And it's an issue. And like I said, my 2 small buildings, I pay approximately $52,000 a year in property taxes. It's 40-year-old buildings. I mean, these are small businesses that lease from me. So just take note that these projects, and I understand from my construction background, I understand the pressures that they're under as far as increase in construction costs and high interest rates. I mean, but this is impacting all of us. It's impacting all of us. And when you're picking and choosing winners and losers, you're skewing the market. So I just wanted to come tonight and bring those points to you. And I won't be talking to all of these because my comments would be the same. So thank you for your time and your attention. I always love coming to DeSoto.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Mitra Templin. I live at 32312 West 91st Street here in DeSoto. I decided to come tonight because I would strongly urge the City Council not to approve these tax abatements and industrial revenue bonds. The strain that this is going to put on our fire, police, schools, and county services like parks and libraries is going to be considerable. There may be plenty of cost-benefit analysis that shows the burden to the city is not going to be very much, but I can assure you that the county and the existing residential that are here in DeSoto already are going to be paying the brunt of this. When these said entities, our fire department, our police, schools, county services, can't provide the services for their citizens because of the increase in property taxes, they're ultimately going to go to the existing residents and ask for mill levy increases. Now, I know abatements only last a certain period of time, and after that period of time, but the changes that this influx of residential could cause, it may not afford to allow us that time to do that. Growth should be paid for by the people bringing it to a place. It shouldn't be paid for all of us that are here that have been paying already quite a bit. I hope you reconsider these abatements. I would hope that you would reduce them considerably to 50% or less, and that this issue could be tabled and not go forward while we can reconsider this. I would say, and like Commissioner Charlotte, I am not going to speak on every one. I can see the benefit to offering abatements for infill development, which I believe 2 of the public hearings would address. But I would hope that you would give this more time to consider the impact that it's going to have on all of the residents that are going to bear this and all of the public entities that I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Roger Templin, 32312 West 91st Street. And while I frequently agree with Mitra, Charlotte and I don't always agree, but today we do. And I particularly wanted to speak to this because we have talked about this subject in the Housing Committee, and we've talked about our policy with regard to how we use tax abatements and what our policy should be in terms of using tax abatements. And the pressure we have to consider residential tax abatements is relatively new. I think our policy absolutely needs to be examined. I think that it should be targeted, and there are certain developments that perhaps it may be appropriate for, but it's not across the board. Here you're asked to consider a couple of different options, a couple of different alternatives for using this device. Some are greenfield development where we have no other city services, and expanding city services will cost us more. Some are infill development. There's distinctions between those. There'd be reasons for us to make a distinction. I do think that it's worth the future of this city to take some time and consider your policy in that context. I don't know that there's been a great study of all of the cities in the region and who permits these sorts of abatements or not, but those that we've seen in committee have some limitations on them, have some targeted goals. And when we use a policy that's generally available for commercial industrial and say, well, I guess it's available for residential too, it seems to me like we're missing the boat. So I would hope that you take the time to consider this in light of the overall policy while we're making precedent that's going to come back and we'll see it again. And again, we're in complete agreement. My comments really go across the board there for all of the issues before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the public hearing item? Okay, I will officially close the public hearing for Flint Meadows East, and I will now officially open the public hearing for Flint Meadows West. Anyone wishing to comment on Flint Meadows West?
I'm going to make one more comment.
Certainly.
Another concern that I have is that you are subsidizing rental units, and the foundation of the stability of Johnson County has been home ownership. And you are subsidizing rentals. You are subsidizing corporations, LLCs. And that, I do not believe, is really the goal of the residents in Johnson County and specifically in DeSoto. They want to have a stable community. They want to have their neighbors as homeowners because that just, like I said, it's been the glue that's kept Johnson County as a vibrant community. So as you go forward, please take that into consideration. Home ownership, I've been making that argument in other venues too, that we need to be focusing on home ownership and not rentals. Because you are going to take people that they're going to be retiring and they're going to have a fistful of rental receipts, and they will not have that equity in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing on Flint Meadows West, and I will now officially open the public hearing for the residents at Lexington Avenue. Oh, yeah, let's get Kevin back. Sorry, I'll wait just a second. Okay. I now officially, let me get a good smack. Officially open the public hearing for the residents at Lexington Avenue. Anyone wish to speak to the residents at Lexington Avenue? Maybe you want to repeat your comments for the benefit of the,
Well, I hate to have Kevin miss out.
all right.
Again, Roger Templin, 32312 West 91st Street. Before you today, you've got a couple of different applicants who have very different situations. And our policy doesn't really make distinctions of that. In the Housing Committee, we've talked about the policy, and I think we've had some good discussion about how we really probably need to examine it before we make precedential decisions tonight that we're going to see again and again and begin funding residential development through these types of abatements. I think it's a good idea to really examine our policy and consider whether or not this is what we really want to be funding. Also for your benefit, Mitra made some good points, as well as Charlotte, in terms of the fact that these new residents will come with costs. And while you will have cost-benefit analysis that show that it may not be that bad, I think the reality of the number of people we're adding to the city and the stresses upon safety and fire and police and parks and libraries and all of the other things, abating these for 10 years when we're going to have immediately having residents putting on our streets is a significantly different question than it is for when we encourage commercial development in our town. Part of the idea of encouraging commercial development is because it will spawn additional development, and that helps raise the overall tax base. In this case, we're doing both, which is somewhat shooting ourselves in the foot. So hopefully you'll have the opportunity to maybe table this so we can really consider this from a policy perspective before making a decision on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Since you weren't here for the first two, I would just encourage you to take a look at the legislative post-audit study for 2022 on IRBs, and these were for industrial developments, and it was not a very positive outcome. And again, you're doing this for residential rather than commercial, and that residential is assessed at 11.5% rather than the 25%. And the original intent of IRBs was to broaden the tax base so that property taxes would go down for the rest of the residents. And that it has been an abysmal failure in that. I will give you one more statistic that in Johnson County in 2016 on IRBs, the amount of tax dollars that was diverted was $18 million. In 2022, that number is now $58 million. So you can see how quickly this is eroding our tax base all across Johnson County, and these new incentives that you are considering tonight is just going to add to the burden. And again, it is a transfer of wealth because the existing residents are going to be subsidizing the services for the new residents. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this item? Public hearing item. All right, I will close that public hearing. Mike, you want to introduce the next two? They're slightly different.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. The final two differ a little bit from the first, the public hearings we've heard. This is essentially a request to increase the amount of an IRB that was previously approved by the governing body. So that was approved last year. The construction is ongoing. You can, it's along Golden Lane and Lexington Avenue. The residential component of this is largely in place, and the commercial component is in the framing stage. But the applicant has requested we increase the amount of that IRB. So that does require us to go through, run all the traps again with the public hearings and the statutory process for, as though it were new, even though we've seen this one before.
Okay.
So the request is broken in the residential part, 3.376 million is separated from the commercial part of 1.75. So Mayor, I'll invite you to open the public
Okay.
hearing then.
I'm now going to officially open the public hearing for the
Golden Lane.
Golden Lane commercial. Anyone wishing to speak to this, please come forward. All right. Wait. Sorry, Rod.
Again, Roger Templin, 32312 West 91st Street. This is a great example of why I think we need to look at the policy, because I think this is a great example of why it might be a useful thing. This is an infill development on a parcel that may have been difficult to work with, and it's something that may be targeted for an incentive. That makes sense to me. But opening it up for anyone who wants to do residential development, I think is a terrible precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing on Golden Lane Commercial, and now I will open the public hearing for Golden Lane Residential. Please come forward and make your comments if you choose. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing on Golden Lane Residential. Again, these will be taken up through in the regular agenda as items 4C through 4G. Our next item on the agenda tonight is our consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes from the council meeting of February 2nd, approval of pay ordinance number 943, approval of agreement with Integrity Home and Office LLC for cleaning services at Public Works Facility, approval of temporary use permit for the MS 150, and approval of a donation request from the DeSoto Historical Society. Anyone have an issue with any of the items on the consent agenda they would like to discuss further, or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Hanamichael?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Murdoch?
Yes.
Ritter? Lane?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Our next item is pay ordinance number 943. All right, Councilman Ritter's declared a conflict and is leaving the meeting. Would you note that in the record, please?
So noted.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve pay ordinance 943A?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance 943A.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Hanamichael?
Yes.
Murdoch?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Will you go get Councilman Ritter? Thank you. All right, our next item tonight is called a public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. The comments that are listed under call to public may or may not be, or the comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council during this meeting. Does anyone wish to address the council under call to public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 3, old business. We do not have any, so we will go to item 4A. Consider contract with HDR Inc. for engineering services related to the design of improvements to the water treatment plant.
Yeah, Mayor and members of the council, Before you is a consideration of a design contract with HDR in response to the southwest growth area. We need to make improvements to the water, increase the capacity of the water treatment plant. Originally, the design was to go from 2 million gallons per day that it is today, and then to 4 million gallons a day, which we have all that equipment in place to do. With the exception of rehabbing some and reconstructing some of our facilities. On the 24th, we got an email from Panasonic that significantly increased the amount of water we expected, so that jumped from the 4 million gallon per day plant all the way back up to its full capacity of 8 million gallons a day when it was built in 1942 by the U.S. Army. So included in the contract with HDR, the estimated cost of the rehabbing the structure to get back to 8 million gallons a day is a little over $30 million. The proposed design fee is $3.1 million, which is about 10.3% of the contract. However, this is a little bit unique in the fact that when it was built in 1942 to today, there's very little record of what was constructed and what was modified in those 70 years. So we have to basically go back and remap the entire building to know exactly what we've got, what we have now, what needs to be repaired and reconstructed. So when you strip some of that stuff out and some of the technical memorandums that go along with this project that you wouldn't normally see in a design, that drops the percent to about 8%. So the engineering fee would be about 8% of the total construction cost, which is in line with industry standards. Also included in the contract is design of a water tower in order to meet the fire and domestic needs in the southwest growth area. We need to add a $2 million gallon water tower. So the estimated construction cost of that is $9.4 million with an estimated or a design fee of $397,000, which is 4.2% of construction cost. And finally included in the contract is a risk and resiliency assessment and emergency action plan for the water tower. These are required by the EPA anytime we do some improvement. So, and that's a fee of $29,000. So with that, we would recommend approval of the contract with HDR in the amount of $3,546,385. I'm available for questions.
Okay. Questions from council? Lori?
Well, of course, my big question is where's this money coming from?
Yep.
How we're gonna fund this. Obviously, we've already talked about how the development pays for that, but just like the people were in the
Yeah.
audience saying, you know, it's gonna cost money. Does that mean where's it gonna come in the short term?
Let's re-articulate that as, I'm sure everybody on the council knows the answer, but it's important to remind ourselves. So for the water treatment plant, you'll recall several months ago, we decided to pursue a construction manager at risk delivery of that project, which allows us to engage an engineer for the full design of the project and work through that to a point that's within 20 or 30% of a design, then bring a contractor on board and let that team work up to a point where the contractor knows enough about the project and the ultimate design that they're able to give us a guaranteed maximum price for the facility. So right now we're thinking that's going to be around $30 million. Funding for the design effort was bonded last year. Remember, we issued about $12.5 million to fund these upfront efforts, largely the design effort and administration of that. So that's the bond money is already in the capital improvements funds. It was deposited in December, so we have the cash on hand for this effort, and we will not be asked to make the full commitment. The next thing you'll see is a selection of that contractor team, which still won't be the full commitment. The full commitment, the moment of truth, will be when that contractor has established a guaranteed maximum price, and they'll come back to us with the big ticket item. We expect that to occur sometime toward the end of this year is the schedule. And Charlie Sievert here is here with HDR. And I know you've met Charlie before. Charlie will jump right up and correct me if I say, and so Chet, if I say anything amiss here. So that's the initial funding, the initial plan to get to, and again, we wouldn't normally be doing this. This project is in response to Panasonic and the transformative opportunity that it represents. So that's why we're doing it this way. The ultimate plan for the full funding of the 30 million, and we're about to hear about another similarly scoped project on the sewer, is that, like you indicated, development pays for development. Panasonic's use is it's large. They need millions of gallons of water a day, and that will generate revenue streams that will pay for portions of this. And whatever portions of this are needed in addition to that, we're going to have those discussions with Panasonic and the developers, other developers in the area, with the intent that this expansion will be fully funded and not on the backs of the current customer base. So that's the general plan moving forward. And it's a kind of a similar discussion on the next agenda.
Anything else, Lori?
The other comment is the fee. 3.1 million seems outrageous to me, but you know, I'm guessing you guys have worked really hard on negotiating on this, and this is something.
Yeah, understand. It's a big number, and when you throw the water tower design in there, it's 3.5 million. Yeah, we HDR I think was sufficiently taken to task on the fee. They provided us with documentation on the number of sheets that'll be, design sheets that'll be involved with the effort, specifics about the time involved from their engineering staff and administrative and project management, specifics about those billing rates, compared those to norms in the industry. Also, the cost estimates for, the $30 million price tag for the facility was, is also something we've been discussing quite a bit over the last several months. It was a sticker shock to us too, and I know the mayor as well. And I'll allow the mayor to speak if on that if he wants to. We had several meetings back and forth with the design team, and I think at least for myself, and I think Chet's nodding, we're comfortable that the effort that will be required to deliver the project on time successfully is accurately reflected in the fee that's being requested.
And I guess the other key thing about the fee is it's hourly, not to exceed, so it's going to be based on actual hours put into the project that are auditable. So it's not a lump sum fee. So if for whatever reason we're able to be more efficient in the design, we won't pay all of this money to HDR. We'll just only pay for the hours that are used to deliver our project.
To that end, I did have a question on attachment C compensation. It does make that reference, and it says the hourly rates reflected in attachment C, but I didn't see the rate schedule.
Confidential information. No.
Okay. And
Charlie will share the rate.
And I assume there is a breakdown because the language that you obviously went through to get there, because it talked about, I'll see if I can find it here, fee summary attached.
Yeah, the fee, all that was provided. I don't, I reviewed it.
Apologize for that.
But it would be part of the
It's part of the
rate
The
schedule.
rate sheet would be part of the has to be part of the
The
contract.
fee summary would be the negotiation,
Right.
but the rate schedule will be part of the contract.
Yeah.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. And I don't think it's, HDR is one of our on-call consultants, and they all provided those rate schedules, and I haven't compared those two.
And that's what I was
Similar.
wondering was, were we pulling that from the on-call contract, or I assume it was comparable?
Comparable, I would say. I don't know if it's exactly identical. I think, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I had.
Good point. Rob, anything? Okay. Kevin? Danny, any questions from your side? Okay, thank you. Someone ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the design contract for the water treatment plant improvements, new water tower in preparation of RRA and ERP in the amount of $3,546,385.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Carmichael.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item 4B, consider contract with GBA for owner's representation services related to the wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this is, as Mike mentioned, very similar reasoning that we need to expand the capacity of the water treatment plant. We are gonna pursue a different alternate delivery method. We're proposing to do a progressive design build, which is similar to what KDOT's doing for 103rd Street. And one of the big differences in that, and in talking with KDOT or KDHE, is we want to look for some creative solutions out here, not just now, but in the future. So the progressive design build allows that, and the main thing it does is that we have one contract with the progressive design builder, so we're able to push that risk from having two contracts where we'd have one with the engineer traditionally and one with the contractor. So progressive design build, we actually push that risk to the design builder at the point we get the guaranteed maximum price. So that's one of the big advantages to that, and we're able to be a little bit more creative in the design solutions. So this contract with GBA, they would represent the city, so they'd actually be an extension of staff handling the RFQ and the RFP to get the progressive design build team on board. And they take that through the point till we had a guaranteed maximum price.
Okay. Any questions from council on this item? Danny, any questions from you? Okay,
Nothing.
thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the owner's representation services agreement with GBA on our expense basis not to exceed $700,725.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Carmichael.
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 4C, consider resolution number 2000 authorizing issuance of $135 million in IRBs and an 80% tax abatement for Flint Meadows East and related documents.
Mayor, similar to related to the public hearing items, I will recuse myself from items 4C and 4D.
Okay, very good. Brandon, have you noted that?
So noted.
Thank you. Are you gonna continue the introduction?
Sure,
or Patrick,
Mayor.
or
I
do
know we have representatives for the applicant
Right.
here, the next two items here in the room tonight. Flint Meadows East, as I did introduce this, the first public hearing, a general description of the project, $135 million IRB on a portion of 79 acres adjacent to Clearview City. The IRBs for the purposes of constructing the project that would allow for exemption of construction materials for the site, and the request also is for an 80% 10-year tax abatement on the property, which is suggested as a maximum. It is consistent with the city's incentive policy, which is up to 80% for this particular area. I think that's all the
Okay.
introduction from me, Mayor. If you want to, as I indicated before, Kevin Wimpy and Jeff White are both online. If you have any questions for them, and the applicant is in the room.
Okay. Jeff, would you like to quickly run through the cost benefit analysis that was mentioned earlier in the public hearing? Any highlights from that we should be aware of?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jeff White with Columbia Capital. Good to be with you tonight. I will sort of do the broad scopes of what you're looking at with respect to the cost benefit
Okay.
analyses in general, and I won't do it 5 times either. So the typical caveats that I give here are that we are, number one, relying on data provided by the applicant. While we do ask for questions and clarifications along the way, we're relying on information that they've provided to us, and that is certainly one potential weakness here. The second is, and I think we've had this philosophical conversation in the past about marginal costs and benefits versus average costs and benefits. Very briefly, if one new person moves to DeSoto and it doesn't cost the city any more to provide police service or fire service or parks or mowing or things like that, and my speculation is that is probably the case, that when your population increases from 6,380 to 6,381, that it from the perspective of city service provision, no one recognizes it. There is a marginal cost to provide public services to that person of 0. That's probably the case if we add 1 or 5 or 10. At some point, however, after we've added enough new folks, there will be a need to expand the contract with the county for police protection. There will be a need potentially to buy a new snowplow. And let's take that one example. If you happen to be the unlucky person to build the 191st house since we've started counting, and the first 190 of those we've determined had a 0 marginal cost, and you happen to be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, then the marginal cost of providing services to house number 191 is the full amount of that snowplow. So now imagine that we have to sort of figure that out with every service the city provides. It's not really practical. I'm not sure with a fleet of folks with green visors you could get there, and the same problem arises on the revenue side as well. And so we're doing that not only for the city, but for any affected school district, just 232 here, for any affected county, just Johnson County here. Thankfully, the property that you all have in a different county doesn't produce any significant benefits, or we'd be talking about 2 counties worth of impact. And so instead, we are using average costs and average benefits, and that has drawbacks. And I believe ultimately that what it does in effect is it probably overstates costs and understates benefits at the end of the day. So when you're looking at the cost-benefit analysis, I think it's important to remember that it is relying on averages. It is a blunt instrument. It is not a scalpel. The other thing that I would note with respect to this particular cost-benefit analysis and our approach, and this really just comes down to philosophy. In fact, Brandon and I have had some discussions along the way. We look at direct costs and benefits, first-generation costs and benefits only. If you talk to folks in the economic development profession, they will talk about output multipliers, induced effects, and things like that. And I don't deny at all that those exist. Going back to my example, if you add 191 new households to DeSoto, chances are the grocery is going to need to add employees. The gas station is going to be buying more supplies and more fuel and all those kinds of things. And the community overall will see induced additional economic output as the result of all those folks coming. I just think it's very, very hard to measure in any way that's reliable. And so our analysis ignores that. And again, I think that probably serves to understate benefits and overstate costs. So I think with respect to all of the cost-benefit analyses you'll see tonight, we are showing net benefits in each year for each of the state, the city, and the county. I'm sorry, for each of the city, the county, and the school district. And we show those in net present value terms, which is looking at them in 2023 dollars. And that makes sense in a number of ways if you think about it. The city generates revenues not only from property taxes, but also from things like franchise fees and sales taxes. The county generates revenues in ways other than just property taxes. It also gets sales taxes and other types of things. And from 2018 forward, school districts now do not suffer abatement on the full amount of their levy. In fact, 8 mils of their levy flows through to the school district unabated on every tax abatement, not just in DeSoto, but every place in the state where the school district has one of these levies. That flows through, and those dollars are important to school districts because really since the sort of the block grant school funding era, roughly a half decade ago or so, those dollars are more or less unrestricted for their use. So those dollars are important to the school district. Those pass through, and so the school district is going to see benefits in each of those years. So that's big picture. The last comment I will leave you with tonight, for all the reasons I've just given you, this is an imperfect tool. It's one that's required by state law. It is but one of the things that you should consider as you are thinking about whether to grant a tax abatement and how much. A lot of those other things are wrapped up in your economic development policies, and I think that DeSoto over the years and in general does a better job than most about thinking about those things and enforcing those things for folks that come in and ask for tax breaks. The city does a good job of making sure that folks are delivering on what they promise. So with that, Mr. Mayor, happy to try to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? All right. Any questions on anything else? Any questions of the applicant? You want to hear anything from the applicant about the project?
So when Roger got up, he did mention the housing committee and some of the discussion, and there was some very robust debate in that housing committee discussion on the incentives. It was a very good debate. It was very good to have robust debate that has both sides. Roger being the one stating the position he took tonight. Some of the other members in favor of and supportive of, mostly in favor of and supportive of the incentives. I do have some questions for the applicant, and one of them would be addressing Mr. Templin's comments about the fact that infill is more deserving of greenfield type of development as far as incentives. So what would be your position on that? Second, on the apartments and things like that, the 3-story, one of the questions I have is, being Class A, are those going to include elevators, not include elevators as a part of that? Which obviously that type of amenity affects costs. And any other comments that you'd have that you would like to address to us?
So I would invite the applicant to forward, maybe you just want to make kind of a general presentation about this project and then specifically answer the questions that Councilman Daniel has presented.
While they're approaching, Mayor, can I just make
Certainly.
one comment? And Kevin Wimpy can speak to this, but one thing we did do with the residents at Lexington and this project is we are postponing the pilot agreement until later down the line. And the reason we wanted to do that was in case there are things that come up that we would like to address, like there's some piece of, additional fire equipment or things of that nature. We just thought that, these projects are a bit off into the future and thought it was better that we have you consider and adopt a pilot agreement later, closer to the time that, you know, we have site plans and the project is ready to be built. So I
Yeah.
thought that was important to
Okay,
know.
and one other comment before they get started, because the Kevin and the stats that they gave us was basically the impact of police things. If you add one, there's no impact. We are looking tonight at 1,264 units. So if that's one person per unit, that's adding a third of our population almost. Not quite. But by the time you have 2 people per unit, average, that is going to be not just you add that one, so there's not an impact. There is going to be impact that we'll have to address.
Okay. You have the floor.
Hey, so Jack Mia on behalf of the applicant Flint Development. I'm with the Pulcinelli Law Firm, legal counsel for Flint Development. Really appreciate you guys' time tonight. We've really enjoyed working with you on the rest of our projects. This is Cale Joyce, Director of Development for Flint Development, and he can kind of give a run through of the projects and what's going on and how they all kind of look.
Okay.
Good evening, Cale Joyce, Flint Development. To address the question, can you repeat your first question, please?
The first question was addressing Mr. Templin's
Infill versus...
infill being more justifying of incentive than greenfield
Sure.
incentive.
So I think to start with that, we are looking at really what can we develop, where's the opportunity to develop. From our position, the amount of acreage that we have under contract, I don't know if we have the ability to find infill position to be able to develop such projects that we desire to build. You also have a lot of topography challenges here north of K10, again, for the scale that we're trying to build to accommodate the vast number of jobs that are coming to DeSoto. So I think between that, infill versus the Greenland that we're looking at, there's better opportunity for us to meet that need of jobs being created with the Greenland that we have under contract.
3-story.
Yes, elevators. We are still evaluating. So obviously between the two, we have approximately 462 garden-style units. With that opportunity at 3-story to do open breezeway, which would reduce contract services, reduce utilities, be able to ultimately, with those lower expenses from construction side, be able to generate a lower rental rate for the end user. But it is still in design. We're still considering that in working through that process.
And then if you kind of just want to walk through. So this
Sure.
is from our proposal that's included in the staff report as part of our write-up and proposal for our incentive request today.
Yes, so this is what we had gone through with the pre-app. This is our initial concept layout. So from how it's orientated, the left side would be the south edge. North would be the 6-8plex, sort of quad 6 to 8plex row houses, let's call them. That would be on the north side. So walking through, again, this is approximately 80-acre tract of land. So in addition to the 27 acres that we have, we are ultimately trying to accommodate all uses of housing. Specifically, and this is not for our IRB request, but we also have the single family residential lots, again, not part of the IRB request. What we're trying to accomplish in this development entirely is to be able to provide housing for the person that lives in a studio all the way to a family that can be in a 2-car attached garage with basement and larger square footprint, everything in between. Again, this is just the 80-acre tract, and we are very excited for this project being across the street from the entrance to Panasonic.
Okay. So are the townhomes attached to each other?
These would be, yeah. So these were, and again, this was the concept layout, still fluid, but these would be attached garages, attached units, and then they would have a space between, the sets, whether they're 4 to 6-8plex, what have you. again, still in the design phase, in fluid in design.
I didn't hear the answer on the elevators. And are any of these ADA compliant?
So for the elevators, we're still working through the design to determine whether we'll have elevators for the 462 approximate units that we have for the garden style. And then as far as the ADA, we will be working with city once we go through approval and our architect to ensure that we're ADA compliant on what's required.
Any questions for the applicant, Lori?
Not a question
right
now, no.
Kevin?
Oh, I'm good.
All right. So the some of the key questions I think we have to answer for ourselves are why, I mean, obviously with thousands of people coming and demand coming, a project like this probably, given enough time, would happen without any incentive, right? I mean, likely, more likely than not, given enough time, a project could come forward. So the discussion or the decision we have to make beyond, whether or not the philosophical questions or the policy discussion about whether or not it's appropriate to incent residential stuff is, why would we incent a residential project when it could develop on its own without incentive at some point in time? And for me, I think it is time. It's about time, right? It's because I think it's important that we have some housing stock available for that would align with the opening of the new facility. That would be my trigger to say, what can I do to create an environment where a residential project like this might come forward. If it's not going to come because the demand's not there right now, the demand's going to be there in 2 years. There has to be something to fill that gap, and that's where for me that's where the incentive comes in. So it's what is the appropriate level to bring the project forward?
I think I would add a little bit to that, in this some of the discussions we've had, but if that property sits vacant for another 2, 3, 4 years, that's still income that's not happening. That's still residents that aren't shopping in DeSoto, spending money at Taco Bell, at Harps, paying for water, paying for services. So there's a value that you'll see there. But the other aspect of it is and this is something that, as I've been looking into it, talking with different people as far as that's there, been seeing numbers like the impact on the school district. When you start talking about the density of housing that multifamily does and the amount of taxation that is on those properties, you're going to be seeing a higher level of revenue from the density of a multifamily unit than you would if that developed into single-family residences. And if it developed into large lot single-family residences, then the amount of impact and the amount of incentive that would be there almost neutralizes out to where even at an incentivized level, the amount of income coming into the city is still greater than single-family residences would be bringing in a lot of ways. So with the fact that we are in need of the multifamily, most of us have acknowledged that and seen that in the council meetings that we've had. You'll see that when you look at some of the data that's been provided to us, even at an incentivized level, it's bringing in a more cost per student to the school district than single-family residences often do. The one thing I have been pushing for in the housing committee is that if we are going to incentivize having the amenities for some of the elderly, some of the people that can work but still need it, like elevators to get to third floors, because I've had even a son, young 20-year-old on third floor, and it makes it difficult for certain aspects of life. And so even just for the convenience of life, but for a lot of people, being able to carry the groceries up that level is an amenity that adds the accessibility that I believe we do want in our community. So it's one of those things as we start looking at this type of incentive accessibility, including elevators, if we're giving the abated amount of money that we're giving, yes, it does add costs, but we're also giving back some of that to be able to help provide some of those amenities is where I'm coming from on that side of it, to where if we're abating residential like this, I would like to make sure that we see that accessibility.
I think along those lines, the other, like one of the other stated goals we've had is that we would hope that some sort of abatements or incentives would also lead to a lower initial rent rate that could be otherwise offered. And I don't know if there's how we work that into the agreement in some way, but I'd like to see that as a goal. Any residential project we offered incentives on, somehow our objective of creating, having that incentive work toward providing lower initial rents would be worked into the agreement somehow in some fashion.
So I'll just throw in some
Yep.
of my comments about this whole residential and the abatements and where we're going from. First off, we do have the housing committee, and you know, going back to the 3 speakers that spoke at the public hearing, I think they had some, you know, we haven't really discussed what the housing committee has come up with. Obviously, the abatements that we're seeing tonight, this one and the others, are not all identical to what's being asked for. We worked really hard years ago to kind of get ahead of things, to put together the incentive package that we did. But I don't know if when we were going through that, in my mind, residential was what was in my mind was happening. When we did the K-10, I was on this council when we did the first residential with K-10 and said, okay, we'll do this because we need to get things kick-started. But we're not going to do this for everybody that keeps wanting to come along and put apartments in. Well, now it's all in front of us. You know, the difference is then is we were trying to kickstart residential in town and we needed some. And it has been a very positive, I think, to the DeSoto to have those apartments and the residents that are there, and it's helped with the businesses in town. So now, though, we need apartments. So to not abate them all, saying, well, they're going to happen anyway. What if they don't? And, you know, what if we sit on it for another 5 years and we're behind? Having residents in town, to me, is important for the businesses in town. I say all the time, I'd love it if my kids lived in DeSoto. I know Rick would love it if his kids did. When Kevin's kids get old enough to where they're going to live, we want them living here. Well, you know, we want them living here, but, you know, it's always growth, you know, and so there's always going to be those benefits. We want the people working here, living here, spending their money here. So, you know, we need the housing here, and we want people to live in, even if they're apartments. Charlotte made a comment about ownership. I wasn't quite following really well. Obviously, apartments are huge in all of the Kansas City metros, so I'm not quite sure how she's saying Johnson County is promoting ownership over apartments. That kind of wasn't quite fitting with what I'm seeing in Johnson County altogether. But, you know, there are points in time where home ownership are just not feasible. The cost of it right now is outrageous for a lot of people, where apartments are going to be, you know, a little bit more economical. Even retired people selling their larger homes. If we don't have senior housing in the way where everything is well maintained for them, then, you know, apartments are going to be their other option also. So with all that being said, I'm not against an abatement, but I do think that I want to make sure that we kind of do have a policy that we want to set forth. and, you know, make sure that we are figuring in all of those things that everybody's concerned about when it comes to added police and added needs of our community. You know, I think about it, if you put Panasonic in, and we know we need fire service to it, we know we've got road service to it. Now we add in all the residential, that's gonna go out there, you know, that's more roads, that's more services, more of everything that we're gonna need, and yes, you know, as long as, you know, those services are still being paid for, and we can show that, that's kind of what's important for me, so. But I do also feel that, you know, where we're going on this abatement, we need to kind of be uniform and have a policy on what we want to do it. And if we can come up with that tonight, great. If we need to put that off and do it at another meeting, then, you know, I think we need to, you know, be understandable with all of us being able to speak and work on that and come to those decisions.
Okay.
Two other comments real quick.
Sure.
One, we are at a unique point with Panasonic coming in. We are at a unique point, especially with that southwest area that we focused on, in that a lot of the infrastructure is being paid for. So when we talk about roads going to these areas, those roads are being put in by the developers of the industrial sites. So we're in a unique situation where, as a city, we're not actually having to put the bulk of that money in. So while we look at abating some of this, where we might have some higher capital outlay to begin with normally, that funding of some of that infrastructure is being done through other mechanisms, other people, that buys that time to where by the time the 10 years wears off, and some of the costs, not necessarily police and fire, but some of the road, some of the other infrastructure that would need attention, won't need it until really the abatement has rolled off, because of kind of the unique situation that the Panasonic development, the county, the state, and everybody else that's helping fund some of that development is putting in. Second, I would like to see some consistency. So we've got the other IRBs coming up asking at 75%. This one's at 80. I'd like to at least see some consistency.
Okay.
As we move forward in that.
All right. So you made the point that I wanted to make, was that we're getting a great investment in the roads. We need to projects like this need to take advantage of that investment, so that and it's a good time to do it. That infrastructure is getting built now, and it's not won't add any additional burden to the rest of our taxpayers, you know, for that going in. So it's great to take advantage of that by getting other projects in that same corridor. It's similarly with the sewer and water improvements that, or at least the city sewer that's going in that area as well. It's a good chunk of that infrastructure is going in, and while there'll be some extensions needed to serve this property, much of that backbone will be in and provided by other development in the area. The other key thing that we had talked about, and I think that, you know, we have the ability to control through the level the abatement is, to hold the school district harmless. We've talked about the number of students generated in apartments versus single family. I think we have a pretty good handle on what we can expect in terms of students and what impacts, what revenues would be generated by a project like this, even with abatement, and by our setting an abatement level, you know, we have the ability to make sure that we hold to our goal of not negatively impacting our school district by adding students that are not being, they're not collecting tax dollars for. So I agree that a uniform a uniform policy is needed, so that we're not all over the place as we get requests in, and varying levels of incentives for different projects that are maybe hard to figure out why one gets one and one gets a different level. So I think that would be good. I'm kind of like Lori. I don't know that when we were working on that incentive policy, really didn't have residential projects in mind. I mean, in our mind, we were working on you know, the traditional eco-devo stuff that, you know, we would be looking to attract to those properties, but,
Well, Mayor, you know, I don't think it's just housing for what's coming. I think we have existing businesses that have employees that have to drive 20, 30, 50
Oh, yeah.
miles a day that would be able to possibly afford some of this housing and still make a living that is, you know, good for them and their families. So I think it's well-rounded. I think it's definitely time to make it happen.
and it's possible that at some point in the future, and it may not be too far down the road, that we decide that we no longer need to incent, you know, projects similar to this, because they're gonna happen, or we need them at a slower pace or whatever, but, so.
If I could just make one
You may.
additional comment, just to keep in mind that we do have, as part of our policy, the but-for criteria, and part of, you know, doing due diligence is, you know, getting a pro forma from the developer. So, the thought would be that, you know, we wouldn't want all the projects to have the exact same abatement percentage, because, you know, one particular project, their pro forma may suggest a higher level as opposed to someone else's, you know, maybe not quite as high. So I just throw that out there, that I don't think we want to get to where everybody gets 80% when, you know, perhaps there are projects that don't really need that level to make their numbers work. So.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking more like 50%, and then if you need more, then.
Yeah.
But it's a good point.
But we did put some of this burden back on the developers when we asked them to come to us with a price per unit, right? I mean, when we said we wanted a rent that was, you know, 1,000 or 1,200, or, you know, we wanted something that was reasonable. And so, I mean, they've taken that into account by asking for some of these things, right?
They provided a rent structure. I don't know that we really provide, I don't know, did we provide
That's,
it?
no, that's not real. I mean, in our discussions around incentivizing any residential, you know, the goal really for us is to be sensitive to the workforce housing need that's coming. Right. And that relates directly to price point. So our messaging has been, you know, we're not interested in lining pockets. We're interested in providing affordable housing. So to the degree we're willing to consider incentives for residential of whatever type, we need to feel confident that that does relate to lower rents.
Right.
And so there's nothing really in the policy application about that now.
At the same time, then that brings the question with Flint saying that's Class A, that'd be on the higher end of the rent spectrum then. And, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but.
Comment, Mayor?
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel that, yeah, we need to step back and look at this about the, you know, that we can protect this structure, and that elevators and ADA compliances are very important to people. And whether they're young workers or old workers, and family members, especially with the way some families are built today. And I think it's very important to our consumers that we're looking out for at this time with elevators and ADA compliance. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Danny.
Make comment on Class A.
Yeah.
So I think Class A in general, or Class B, Class C, is really, it's a blanket answer for a subcategory of a subcategory. So industrial versus multifamily, and then breaks down Class A, Class B, Class C. Within that, I really think, you know, Class A, you know, how do you break that down to compare something that is high luxury, something that we've seen in, you know, Leawood versus a garden style asset that also could be considered Class A. I think for this and what we're trying to accomplish in Class A is build a nice product that's brand new, and within that of just being a new product, I think arguably is Class A. What I think we are trying to do and take in consideration of this is that we don't want to build something that ultimately is at a rental rate that we are not able to fill the occupancy of the building. We have a vacant building. If we are at a rental rate that is equivalent, higher to something that is more interior to Kansas City, I think we run into that risk of why, is it worth the same amount of rent or arguably potentially lower rent interior to Kansas City, and I'm willing to drive the 15 minutes to get to work. So my point in sharing that is we are extremely cognizant of building something that we can, get the occupancy for it, and also is at a lower price point than what we're seeing today in, east or west of where we're located, where if this is not developed, people will be living at.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right.
So, question for Patrick, maybe. Sure. Can the resolution have two different possible incentives based upon conditions, such as elevators, to where it would be like an 80% abatement with elevators or 75 without? Can there be that type of contingency?
You could, but I think the pilot agreement would probably be the better place to address that. Not sure, and Kevin Wimpy's can.
So passing the resolution doesn't necessarily mean that's what they will get?
Well, it's a resolution of intent, so you are stating that it's your intent to give an 80% abatement. But as far as like the elevators, the accessibility, those are things that we could negotiate with the applicant, because bottom line, a pilot agreement has to be negotiated and agreed to between the city and the applicant in connection with the bonds being issued. So that is something that we will need.
Because elevators aren't cheap, so if it was a matter of, okay, we'll give some extra incentive if, is kind of the question.
I just think it'd be tough in connection with the resolution to map that out, like requiring I don't know what that means. Does that mean like one elevator, so many units?
So that'd be more pilot.
So I think it'd be more conducive to taking that up in connection with the pilot.
And Patrick, if I could, the resolution does have section 5 conditions to issuance that includes the language about commercially reasonable provision for accessibility to and within portions of the project, and talks about may include elevators, handicap accessible bathrooms, doorways, zero entry shop. So this is a resolution of intent. That would be a pilot.
So it has the language to be able to include into the pilot.
Yeah, I mean we were cognizant of this issue, and we included that in this resolution for that reason. Yeah.
So, I mean, we discussed that many times in the committee.
Well, I'll kind of let it out that,
Go ahead.
as I've said before, I'm in favor for abatement, but I'm not sure if I'm in favor of the 80% abatement. As far as the percentage.
So with it being a resolution, if you wanted to propose something different, you would just make a motion to adopt the resolution, but revise, indicate that you want to do a different percentage. And then Kevin and I would work on modifying the resolution to reflect.
I think a 75, based on just some numbers that we have, a 75% level puts the funding per student, expected student, at a level that is similar to most of the single-family residential developments we have in the city. For me, I would think that based on that knowledge, I wouldn't want to go over 75%, because I know that going more than that it looks like we're providing less than we would for a comparable single-family development, were it to come in without any level of incentive at all.
So do we have to put that in the pilot agreement?
Now, we could just change the resolution and say 75% is what we choose to provide for this project.
Just making that change instead of as written.
Yeah, I would add, if we could pull up, I think one of our slides has a cost of debt analysis where we really took into account the 80% abatement to figure out whether or not the project is able to go forward. So I think taking down that 5%, while we understand your concerns, really ends up putting the project in jeopardy. So trying to figure out our margins at the 80%, which is consistent with the incentive policy of the city, is kind of where we landed. So before changing the resolution of intent, we'd have to probably go figure out if that project papers.
Okay.
By moving that percentage.
And keeping in mind, the 80% was listed as a maximum that might be available
Sure.
for that property. It's not
Sure.
listed as a guaranteed incentive that could be attained for that.
Yes, completely understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going off, our goal is to hold the district harmless, and from just my calculations, that's what I'm seeing. 75% does that, 80% maybe puts it a little bit on the other side of that. So
okay,
that's where that number's coming for me. And if we need to redo calculations, I think we can certainly allow that to happen.
I just point out.
Do you want to walk through? Yeah.
Yeah,
If you
so
keep
is
sliding
this the
down.
slide you're talking
No,
about?
keep sliding down a couple, should be a few more pages down.
I may have to download this to rotate it, so.
Yeah, keep going.
I would like to see that also, Mayor.
Keep going. It's this slide.
It's this one, okay. Well, I apologize, it's not oriented correctly. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Maybe just turn your computer sideways there. Mike.
We could all turn our heads sideways.
Turn their heads.
Sorry, it'll just be a moment. It's a pretty big file.
Now, you remember what page you were on?
Nope.
70.
70.
Kale does.
Not layers. Of course, this is a completely different layout than what I'm used to.
It's a photo viewer or
Is
something.
it the new? This isn't PDF. This isn't.
I don't think
an
so.
Acrobat. Oh, okay.
I'm not sure
Well,
what
I
it
think
is.
that's not going to work for us. Let's.
Mayor, while we're waiting there, if we do consider dropping the incentive, will that make it harder for them to install the elevators that we're trying to incentivize? Yeah. I don't know the answer to that.
It's just, we have a number of opposing goals, right, on the project, so.
Because by the time you have the concrete silos for the elevators, the mechanics,
Mike, you might just try, can you do like just a.
Got it.
There we go.
Got it.
This is a completely new
Yeah,
Adobe
I
Acrobat
guess, yeah, I
layout.
thought
Never
it
seen this
looked like a JPEG viewer
Yeah.
or something.
This is the one.
Yes,
Dale?
it is.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so what this is showing, we've got the 27 acres and the 79 in the 3 columns that are showing our garden style, our townhomes or the row houses, and then on the 27 acres, it's the build to rent, the duplex, which we'll obviously address here shortly. What the math is and what I'm showing here essentially is where returns would be, projected returns would be with and without the incentives. And really what the row is to look at is return on cost without incentives bolded, and then unlevered return on costs, which would include the incentives. Essentially, and then market return on costs is at the bottom. What I'm showing here is that without debt, if you were to pay for the entire project, what return on cost is, it is the income minus expenses. There's no debt in this scenario. So that is income minus expenses, net operating income, divided by the total project costs. In that percentage, it would be the percentage return, or return on costs. So in the market today, with where interest rates are at, really it has shifted significantly from where it was, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago especially. The market today, as far as return on costs, is at a 6.5%, and really that's it fluctuates a little bit. So if you're in let's call it Miami or Dallas, maybe they are willing to accept a lower return on cost for the investment for a primary market such as those. In more tertiary, secondary, tertiary markets, that number goes up for the inevitable risk compared to again a primary market such as Chicago or New York. So 6.5 is where we see Kansas City specifically in general, and this is factoring the 80% abatement and sales tax exemption, and that's getting us right to just shy within a few basis points away from that market return on cost number of 6.5. I think really, if anything, this slide is hugely important just to show what happens without abatements and where we would be at, which is that 5.22% to what we're projecting 5.66%, obviously between multiple communities. And really that's just showing that this is unfeasible for development for what return requirements would be in today's market. As far as I think we're fully understanding of 80% being the max, and really just wanted to show this at this is at 80%.
Okay, thank you, Cale.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Any other discussion? So we have two courses of action, I guess. We can approve the resolution 2000 as written with the 80%, or we got three, I guess. Or we can propose an alternate level, or we can kick it down the road, table it, think about it, and take it up again at our next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if they're terribly concerned about return on cost, I think it would be prudent probably to table this so that I couldn't see the exhibit. That return on cost statistic is terribly unsatisfying to me. It depends on what year you pick. We'd need to look to see how much contingency they have built into the cost factor. One way to increase your cost is to increase the amount of contingency you've got in there. So how much of that are you actually going to spend that can have a material impact? It sounds like we have a fundamental difference in approach here, and a concern maybe about the viability of the project that it sounds like it's not ripe for action tonight.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, and to add on to what Jeff is saying, that was kind of what was in my mind. I'm not, numbers are numbers. I don't know where those numbers came from, but if I'm building a house and I come out 500,000 for what I'm asking for instead of 400,000 what I was intending to spend, well, I got to cut back somewhere. So these numbers at 80% are just squeaking by for the numbers without even including elevators that we're hoping are going to be a part of that. So they're saying elevators they don't know yet, so then you add that in, is that even higher? So have they accounted for extra dollars or not? So I understand we can put a piece of paper like this in front of us with all these numbers, but I think that the cost of the project may need to be adjusted if that we as a city still need to be responsible for what we're doing. That if changes need to be made, maybe it's the project itself that needs to make the changes, not us. Thank you.
So anyone's, what is our,
I agree with Lori. I think we ought to kick it down the road and put forward into it. I just think that
all
we
right,
need to for our people.
we have two folks that think we should delay action until we're able to further investigate the impact of a lower level of incentive.
Mayor, based on your comments and taking our advisor's recommendation, I don't see any need to put forward. I mean, I'm 2 to 2, and you've already stated that 75 is a better number. Just save time. Table till next meeting.
Okay. Are you agreeable for additional consideration?
I'm agreeable, I'm mixed in some ways, but with the advisor recommending it, I just would encourage not kicking it too far down,
Yeah,
because this is a need that the community does have. So, I would like to see it taken back up fairly quickly once we get kind of numbers resolved and worked through. And I'm not totally opposed to the 80%, provided they include some of the amenities that we're talking about, like the elevators, things like that. But without those, then it's a matter of reconsideration of like the 75% or things like that.
All right.
But like I said, at this point, I'm kind of mixed both ways, but it looks like it'd be 3 to 1 anyway, so.
How much time would we need
I ain't really, I think, I think it's just what I said.
Come up with a
Hard to
second
say.
meeting and look at bringing it back in a month, 2 weeks? or
Well,
next meeting?
if you're not specific about when you table it to, then we can bring
All
it
right.
up when
Yeah,
it's
that's
right,
true.
when
We
it's
don't have
ready,
to
and we
table
can
it,
diligently
yeah.
work on.
All right. I don't want to give the wrong impression. Wholly supportive of your project. So I just want to make sure we're making the right decision right now at the start of it. I would ask for a motion to table to a future meeting.
I'll make a motion, we table.
I'll second that.
All right. And that would, I would. All right. We have a motion, a second to table item for C.
Or C.
Consider resolution 2000 to a future meeting. Any discussion of the motion?
I think, Mayor, I just want to add that I'm very supportive of this project, and I understand the need for it. And so I hope you bring it back quick.
I've said, but I'm supportive, and I'd like to see it come back much sooner than later. I
Okay.
mean, if even possible, next council meeting with the questions answered.
All right. All in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right. Item 4D, Resolution 2001 related to issuance of 90 million in IRBs and an 80% tax abatement for Flint Meadows West. Introduction?
Yes, Mayor, very similar.
Similar but different
Identical, just a little different project. This project is 27 acres along Edgerton Road, which would be just across the street from the Flint Industrial Park that's under development now. It is a maintenance-provided duplex facility, 248 units there. I will stop there and answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Questions from City Administrator? Kay, you want to come up and run through the
Sure.
development on the West project, please?
Sure. Believe, yes, there will be another site plan.
Hang on.
Oops, that's Rob. That's me.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So should be a few slides
Yeah,
up from
let me
here.
get
Oh,
to
you're
them.
getting
I
the
can
one?
even orient these. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that what you want to start there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so again, orientating ourselves, the top of the page would be north, bottom of the page would be south. The west edge of the concept layout, that is Edgerton Road. So this project, again, in consideration of the other communities that we have, we are trying to be strategic to not compete in these units, again, to achieve that goal that we have to provide an array of housing options for all types of people. What this is it is a duplex community, attached garages that range from single car attached garages to 2-car attached garages. We've worked very hard with NSPJ, our architect, to create the sort of ebbs and flow and shape of the site so that the western units aren't or minimize the amount of western units that are directly facing our Flint industrial site. This project, again, 2-story. We are looking at it right now with the intent of having basements in these. And we're extremely excited about this. This build to rent community, really what it is and how we view this is, while they are duplexes, they're homes, this is operated as an apartment complex, and I look at these as instead of being a 3-story vertical apartment complex, this is a horizontal apartment complex. So maintenance provided, tenants have utilities in their name. If a light bulb goes out, then we'll have someone come and replace it, including landscaping as well. Clubhouse with pool and amenity package. And what's unique about this one is that all the garages are in the rear, which is why there's more roadways in here. The pictures that are on this slide are from Hutton Farms, which is an existing product based in Lawrence. It is aged extremely well, and what that does is it creates this really nice, clean community, again, on land that it doesn't have anything existing on it right now.
Okay.
Are the basements, finished basements, a part of the square footage, or is that an unfinished in addition?
No, so right now, everything that I've been doing is not considering that as finished space. So all of the square feet that I have are livable from main floor to second floor. And I think that's something that we'll evaluate on, if you finish it, then obviously there's more space, but then there's higher rents. Unfinished provides the additional storage space, but not necessarily the livable space and lower rents there. What this really is, and I think this is a good point to make, there is a huge void, I think nationally, in what can accommodate 3-bedroom or even 4-bedroom homes. This is, again, not to compete with our row house type community on the approximate 80-acre site. These are larger units. They're really focused on attracting families that can really take pride in where they're living at and ultimately hope that they will live there long term as they raise their kids.
I guess.
Is any of these ADA compliant?
The question was ADA compliance.
Sure, I think where we're at right now on all these is concept layout, and we have yet to release our architects on full design for all of these communities. So I don't have an answer as far as whether they are entirely ADA compliant or not, just because we have not gotten past what we're looking at right now as far as design.
Thank you.
So I think some of us know about the housing project that's coming over in Lenexa, and one of those houses that they're doing don't have basements. And so I just question when you're doing rental properties like this, and have you thought of the not basements, and does that save digging basements in that many
Sure.
in Kansas in this area with the rock and everything?
Sure.
Would that save money, and would that make it one area that could be a savings as far as when you're looking at your cost analysis and how much it's going to cost?
Yes. It's a great question. We were looking at another project that was of similar size to this, also very close to the area that we are here in DeSoto. That was slab on grade or post-tension. We looked at both of those. It really depends on the site is the correct answer for that. So east to west, there is elevation change. What the challenge is for slab on grade or post-tension slab is it's preparing the dirt and treating the dirt so that you don't have the future issues of settling for them. So what we found is that initially my thought was exactly that slab on grade, lowest cost. When you factored in treating the soil or cutting the dirt to prep it, that actually made it at times potentially, I mean, it made it more expensive and, you know,
Traditional basement.
traditional basements. What we also, and this goes into the design that we're working very close with our architect on is, you know, it may very well be where some of these have basements that have walkouts in an area. And ultimately what we're doing is minimizing the amount of cuts and fills that we're doing on the site to balance it of what we would have to spend to, you know, prep it so that you would be able to build slabs, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
On the slabs, have you considered safe rooms?
Yes, sir. So with safe rooms, that's another component to it. So obviously, if you have basements, then there's no need for safe rooms. Oklahoma is an area that I study quite a bit as far as safe rooms go because it's very challenging to build, if possible, to build, you know, basements there. There are ways to do, and that's obviously in the design phase, whether it's reinforcing an interior bathroom or there's pods that they mount in the garages to the slabs to other avenues, which are sort of these little enclosures that you can get inside of underneath, inside of the garages. Again, our intent with this by design and how I'm thinking about this being basements, we don't have that sort of consideration on this one specifically.
Thank you. So this project, again, is calculated based on the 80% level of incentive abatement. I think a lot of the similar discussion elements from the previous, other than no elevators factor in to this project.
Right.
What about elevators to the bay? No, just kidding.
It's a great, I mean, I really like the product. The project looks fantastic, but so.
The concept, the size, it looks like a good project.
Just the abatement level of that.
Yeah, so,
Hesitant.
again, is it,
Again, is it?
do we see this as a difference and would be appropriate for the 80%? Do we have it in our head that, I mean, that the numbers that kind of are steering me toward 75 for
The school district.
school district you know, and hold harmless level.
And these would be more likely to impact the school district.
Right, these are, I think,
The
yeah,
three
definitely,
bedroom.
these are gonna generate, this is where the kids are gonna come from, because they're 3 or 4 bedrooms, great neighborhood.
Yeah, because the school district's talked about studio and 1 bedroom, almost no impact. 2, some but small impact, but 3's where you really start impacting it, but that's also an area where we will need some too.
Yeah.
But again, we have a good relationship with our school district. It's one of the key selling points for any of these properties that you have, to where making sure that they're held harmless through this is going to be beneficial to your project, beneficial to the city, beneficial to the school district.
So I mean, I think we're at the same spot. We would ask for a little delay so that you guys can make some additional calculations. We can have some additional discussions and then bring this back at a future meeting. That's acceptable. Is that where we are?
I agree.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we table item 40.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same? All right, so we'll table these two. Take them up at another meeting, hopefully our next meeting, or the one right after that. Item,
Mayor, can we take about a 5-minute break while we bring Hannah Michael back in?
sure, good idea. 5-minute break.
Okay. The video will continue. I'll go ahead and mute the audio though. Thanks. I realize that the go-to-meeting participants weren't seeing this. That's what Jeff said.
Yeah, that's what Jeff said.
They don't see what we display here, and I'm just doing it. Well, not, well, I guess tonight. Looks like it's.
I know that notice that it's drained, I mean, my battery's gone from 9.
Oh, really? Well, that one died.
That one died. Mine's about to die, I don't know.
Maybe I could take this.
Glad he told me this.
Okay, there you go. So,
Sorry to hear it.
He threw us up. We wanted to say he threw us up.
Nope, you're good. That's part of the fun of them, when they're wrong.
Oh, yeah, you gotta get to work on it.
Yeah, they would fall.
I guess I should make it.
Sure, yeah.
I think somebody did. Yeah, Jeff went and got it, so he's messing with the rest.
Well, yeah, I'll shout out.
Thanks, guys.
Mayor.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, do it. Good. Hey, how you doing? Good, good, good to see you. Did you?
Good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you guys should summertime.
Caught up on everything that goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you used to design or you
No, I used to just, in the back.
Yeah.
I lived up in Kilster. Give me warm. But now I live in a home. I can't see mine. We've lived in.
I'm on the plane.
There's not a whole lot going on.
That's
It's just hard to get to. Yeah, it's something 6 highways.
That's what the link board is going on.
There's not a great shot.
Did you say you're on the planning commission down Baldwin?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, you remember, I denied that project that you guys.
That was your battery.
Smoking in
Oh, that's
fire
right,
truck.
yeah. I didn't remember if it was the dog park one or
No,
that
it was that one. It was the little island
Oh, yeah.
that the guy wanted.
I do not make it a habit of showing up down there and saying I'm not.
Mine's a 44.
Mine's at 58.
And it was
Mine's
100.
at 21, but I was running multiple apps side by side.
So I haven't updated the app, I wonder.
I tried it once.
I usually don't.
I've-
Well, I don't know. because I
All
don't
the
know.
background stuff doesn't utilize much, it's what you have in the foreground that really
Is it?
utilizes. But that's where I have a notes app and
Because the sign clearly.
But like, when you've got multiple ones,
when you're doing split view, then
Just
both
go
are
to where.
they're all,
and that's
yeah.
Just bring your
I've got
phone,
about
plug it in.
3.
I could have some cords here for everybody.
I
It
know,
only
I'm
costs that
gonna-
much just to have a bunch of cords here.
Yeah, just put
Just
some
drill
little
some holes
USB
in
Like on the,
Puck,
south side.
all around
Dumps
there.
right into down.
That wouldn't take that much.
So Rob, even when you've got, you know.
Rob will take care of that for us.
I think those are on
minimal.
minimal,
But if you're doing like the split view,
like.
yeah, like that, then both apps are.
All.
Back, Mayor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's,
it's warm.
there's electrical right here that's not going to.
It's a public works, but it's.
We're almost back, not quite.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's Sandra.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's for all the teams to get cords right.
I got another minute.
All right.
Seems like that is very breaking.
Yeah. Is that what, did you record the time when we start? I had 45.
I had 44, but
Okay.
close enough.
All right, it's 50 anyways, so.
Yeah, it's usually no sooner than. That's usually how the law reads.
All right.
So you're fine.
Let's do another sound check. Danny, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay, good.
All right, we're back, call the meeting back to regular, or back from break. And we'll carry on. Item 4E. Consider resolution 2002 related to authorizing issuance of 73 million in IRBs and this was 75, wasn't it?
This is 75%.
This one's
Oh, I'm sorry.
75.
Yeah, there's a typo there. I apologize.
75% tax abatement for the residents at Lexington Avenue and related documents. Mike?
Yes, council, similar request, different scenario though. This is, the residences at Lexington is, I had this written down. It's 382 units on roughly 20 acres, and this is off of 90th Street and Lexington Avenue behind the Dollar General.
All right. I'm gonna declare a conflict. My company works, I'm not working on this project, but my
Okay.
company is, so, just reminded me.
Okay.
Dustin, yeah, we're doing
That's
that.
it.
So would you note that?
We'll note the mayor's absence.
And, Lori,
We'll take over.
you have the meeting.
All right.
So noted.
Okay, yeah, so as I was indicating, about 20 acres, 382 units. This site has been the subject of several attempts at apartment complexes since the early 2000s. It's been zoned residential, and plans for apartment units have been ongoing for quite a while. Infrastructure has been in place. They actually did receive a site plan approval from the Planning Commission last month. And before you tonight is a request for IRBs in the amount of $73 million and 75% tax abatement for 10 years. So I'll stop there. The applicant is in the room.
Real quick, so it is 75 in the documentation, but the agenda says 80. So it is.
Yeah, the
75.
agenda is wrong. It is
Yeah.
75, yeah. So the
Very
pilot the resolution indicates pilots of 25%, so that was, yes.
So I do have a question for the applicant. Any update or progress on access via Commerce Drive?
So I have been in discussion with Joe Bazone. We've had several discussions. Joe would like to stagger the drive between his property and the property to the north. And so Joe was actually going to reach out to the property owner to the north, who he knows, and have that discussion. I just reached out to Joe before I came here, and he said he had not been able to meet him in person because Gary was in the Bahamas, just got back, and Joe just got back from the Super Bowl. So, but that's where we stand, and I have indicated I've made an offer to buy the sliver of ground. I've presented an easement agreement to Joe. Of course, we'll have to amend that easement agreement. But that's where we stand, and I am still actively working on it.
So there's
It
some
would,
openness from the property?
there's some openness from Joe. Now, I don't know what the property owner to the north would indicate
That
yet.
was
But
one of the number one objections from
yeah,
townhomes.
yep.
That said, I appreciate the information that you have provided. The fact that you've reached out to the school district to try and guarantee that they were held harmless in the rates that you've come up with. The fact that it is infill, the fact that you are including elevators And also, if possible, the road to Commerce, if
Right.
the easements and stuff work out. So I am supportive of this, and at the 75%, it's including a lot of the amenities that we talked about that delayed the prior agreements.
Yeah, I will indicate real quick, that we anticipate having elevator, and we are we're further down the road on design now, and we do have elevators in all of the buildings except for the 2-story buildings, which abut the south side of the property. So there's 4 buildings that are 2-story. Everything else in there, besides the clubhouse, is 3-story, and we will have elevators in
In
there.
the 3-story, which
Yeah.
is what we were talking about with
Yeah.
prior
Yeah.
properties too, so.
Questions or comments from anyone else?
Comment?
Danny, did you have a comment or a question?
Yes, I think he's done his due diligence with this project. I feel that I'm in favor of it and the way it is and the way it reads. So I just wanted to tell you that. Lori, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment relative to what we heard in the public hearing, give some of my perspective there. When IRBs when it was stated that IRBs are a disaster, I don't think that's proven to be the case in our community. I think we have used incentives or tools at the city's discretion to try to create some strategic objectives that we've got and to drive some of our needs. While it isn't always appropriate to incent residential, I think there is in our case, and we have proven it successful with K10 apartments. I think the other thing is we've historically been lacking in residential to drive the kinds of commercial services that our community has wanted for literally decades. Retail follows rooftops, and we've never had enough population to attract the commercial services that we've wanted, and we're seeing that now. And so by incenting some of the opportunities that are out there, then we build on that and we create other things. So, whether it's support of our grocery store with increased residents, whether it's increased fast food opportunities or support of restaurant opportunities that we have in town, we're gaining from sales tax in those ways, obviously not to the same extent, but we are seeing a boost in the community by utilizing these tools to support these kinds of projects. So I'm totally in favor of it. In terms of the concept here, I think it's serving a need that compounds itself, if you will. So I think it's applicable. I was on Planning Commission 15, 18 years ago when we first heard a apartment proposal on this site. So certainly the use, I don't think is, the use is well grounded in our community. It's been contemplated for a long, long time. So the question, I think, with the action item tonight is the incentive, the tax abatement, and is that appropriate for it? Not the use itself is not what we're considering, although by approving the incentive, then we are promoting that the project move forward. So whether or not at what point there's a limit on these kinds of things, that's something to be decided in the future. The other thing I wanted to comment on is the idea of revisiting our policies. While a proposal such as this is in midstream, I don't think is ever appropriate, because any developer such as the one we have here tonight is always looking for predictability, and certainly they want to know if they start into a process that the expectations are going to continue the same. So I certainly would not be in favor of considering policy changes midstream. So I think we've got precedent as well that the applicability to this kind of project has worked out for us, and I think we still have some capacity in our market. So that's all I've got.
Kevin, I and Rob, I agree with both of your comments, and thank you for driving retail on the rooftops. I forgot all about that in the first discussion, but it definitely does that, so, I agree with both of you. I don't want to repeat it.
Yeah, I would say the same thing when, we've been working on roadmaps with the EDC for quite a while. Well, we had a roadmap a while ago anyway. And that roadmap, you know, we focused heavily on residential. Dustin, if you can remember that, probably maybe just even before you took over on there, and Kevin, you were probably on it with me, but, you know, the goals at that time were to get, you know, work to get the residential up. I want to say the number was like closer to 10,000 or so, you know, and so as far as the population. So, you know, to do that, you know, we have to kind of work in this direction. And so you know, I guess the 75% in this one to me is reasonable. If the schools are held harmless with this number, which I think we had agreed, is that right, Rob and Mike, that the schools were okay with this 75% on this one?
As a matter of fact, I believe Frank spoke to that,
yeah,
it was directly on these numbers.
You know, so I know, you know, the difference between previous one we talked about and this, just, you know, there's just little differences that, you know, to me make up for that. You know, where roads already are, where everything is ready to go, and, you know, I don't know that we're expanding a lot of services by, you know, with this particular one, so. So anyway, I think you know, here we have some support of this project. So if anybody has any further action they'd like to take.
I'll make a motion that we approve, it's gonna be resolution 2000, correct?
2002.
I'll second that.
We didn't, hold on, Danny, we didn't approve the other two.
Yeah, we can just, go with the 2002 and we'll.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2002 related to the residents at Lexington as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. If we can have a roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. Is Rick involved in any of the next?
No, don't believe so. Well, I'll go get it. We can ask him.
Yeah, there would have been several documents.
Yeah, that's the only thing, we'll just use those things.
So if we hold those resolution numbers, fill in. You can find Rick.
All right. Item F. Consider resolution 2003 authorizing issuance of $1,759,500 in IRBs and 75% tax abatement for Golden Lane Commercial.
Yes, Mayor, we discussed before the meeting, maybe having the applicant have
All
an
right.
opportunity to explain this one.
Kind of technical, so I brought.
Yeah, thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Matt Goff with Barber Emerson Law Firm. I'm here tonight for Golden Lane Residential and Golden Lane Commercial. You approved an IRB for the two projects in 2021, and we knew at some point this day would come because there's always been plans for a commercial project in the north and a residential component in the south. Today, there's an entity, Golden Lane Commercial, that owns the lot in the north, and residential owns the three tax parcels in the south that's shown on the letter. So no matter what else happened, we knew we'd be splitting this up into 2 bond issuances. Now, since 2021, a couple other things changed a little bit. The total cost of both projects increased above the amount we gave you in 2021. So you've approved $4,325,000 worth of IRBs. And by our current math, including all costs, whether we have to bond them or not, $5,136,000. So there's a difference of $811,000. The other thing that's occurring is the construction on the commercial side to the north is being framed. Is that right? And so it's underway, but it's a little bit behind in terms of completion versus the residential, which is being insulated. There's an agreement, or there's part of the agreement in the existing pilot agreement that requires us to hit a specific amount of dollars spent by the test date. The test date presently is July 1. To avoid any, and it's all or nothing. If we're $1 short on the test date, there's no abatement. So since we're coming here anyway, and we needed to split it up, and we know that costs have increased, and we know that some of the timeline's a little different, we wanted to take this opportunity in one fell swoop to clear up any potential issues we might have. So we moved the test date from July 1, 2023 to December 1, 2023, or 31, excuse me. We increased the bond capacity so that we don't have to worry about hitting it or exceeding it. And we separate the 2 projects into 2 pilot agreements to have 2 issuances, just as we always knew we probably would anyway. So hopefully that's a clear enough explanation of why we're here, but I'm pleased to stand for questions that you may have.
Questions of the applicant from council?
I was gonna say, simply from having talked to Dustin, I'm excited to see what the commercial project is, considering some of the tenants that are gonna be taking over, and one of those is a DeSoto move that's gonna be an upgrade for them, so it's a project that truly is benefiting the community.
All right. Thank you for the explanation. That cleared it up for me.
Thank you.
At least. Any discussion, or are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 2003 related to Golden Lane Commercial LLC as written.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Likewise, we need a motion for resolution 2004.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2004 related to Golden Lane Residential LLC as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, very good. We'll move on. Consider ordinance 2565 rezoning property at 8180 Shawnee Street.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Now it's my turn to address you. I appreciate that this evening. What you have before you is a rezoning request for our former street shop at 82nd and Shawnee Street. Dustin Baker of Alco Development is the applicant. We felt like this was an appropriate time to bring this forward through the Planning Commission and ultimately to the City Council because there is a purchase agreement on this property. Due diligence has been completed by the applicant, and the next step in the process obviously was to rezone the property. We have had a sketch plat meeting with the applicant showing a preliminary layout, so the project is moving along. As far as items that we need to do for staff, we did notify residents nearby. We also published a notice in the legal record and also had a public hearing on the Planning Commission on the 24th of January. I did get one call from a neighbor on the project. They actually own the 3 lots to the northeast of the old street shop, and mostly they weren't really concerned about the rezoning. It was mostly about there's an old fence, and they just want to make sure a new fence would be put up on and the appropriate property line. They were unsure if the old chain link fence is actually where it's supposed to be. So really there were no questions or concerns raised by the residents of the area. As you pointed out in the staff report, the area surrounding the old street shop is primarily RH. It is for two-family homes or higher density single-family homes that encourages strong residential neighborhoods consistent with traditional Old Town DeSoto. The tract is now, I say it's vacant, it's unused. There's still several buildings from our former street shop, and then the old water treatment plant was there as well. So right now it's off the tax rolls and it is just sitting there. As you recall, quite some time ago, we had a committee that was looking at how to redevelop this property, and we've done some initial discussions on what was it going to cost to demolish the building and turn it into a green grass site, but this opportunity presented itself to the council, and we're moving forward with a rezoning as one of the steps in the process. The applicant is requesting a multifamily R3 rezoning. As I said, we've had a sketch plat meeting and seen some initial concepts and feel like those are fit within the residential quality of the area and will be a benefit to the location. On page 3 of the staff report, it does show the tract to be rezoned. It shows the RH zoning all around it. There is one small piece of R3 that does exist, and then also the R2A piece that exists as well. It's being developed right now. That's Dave Anderson's duplex projects. There's 3 duplexes going on that site. As far as reviewing the zoning compatibility factors, character of the neighborhood, the surrounding area includes primarily single-family residences with a few multifamily uses nearby. The change to R3 feel will be a benefit to the area versus the former city street shop. The proposed zoning is compatible with the surrounding zoning and land use. As I said, this will still remain a heavily RH district. Also, the site itself is kind of tucked away down Shawnee Street, so it won't have a significant impact on any of the nearby residences. Moving on, suitability of the uses, which the property is restricted under its existing zoning. The existing zoning does not inhibit the property from being used, but it could not be used for multifamily. We only allow single-family and duplexes in the RH district. Length of time the property's remained unused as zoned. Actually, it's been used for quite a while, but it certainly has not been used for housing. It is an infill project, which is something we are encouraging. The R3 zoning would provide economic benefit by adding tax base, then also additional housing in the downtown area. And by the way, all these findings were positive as we presented them to the Planning Commission. As I mentioned, DeSoto has a strong need to increase housing options, and this is an infill project in the old town of DeSoto. There are not very many of these infill sites left, and it's good to see that they're being developed as the demand for housing increases in our community. Availability of required utilities. The project property does have water nearby. There's a water main on 82nd Street. There's also sewer, or there's a force main on 82nd Street and a manhole nearby. This actually, the site would be, it'd have a grinder pump of some sort, would pump up to the manhole and then into the force main. There's already electricity on the site. In fact, Evergy used to have a substation on the site, which has been removed and dismantled. It's also been tested with our initial phase 1, and then also Dustin's had the site checked as well for any kind of environmental contamination. It's come up clean. We don't see any increase in police, fire, parks, and schools will see any change really from previous conditions, even though there will be some additional residents in this area. As far as parking, it would all be required on site as by city code. And as I said, we've seen layouts of the site and everything seems to be in order. We have not had a formal application for this location yet, however. As I mentioned, environmental harm, I don't see any, or staff's opinion is there won't be any environmental significant increase or decrease in environmental harm, and actually it could be a benefit because we used to, have equipment there, we used to have fuel, things like that. As I mentioned, the Evergy substation was there, so actually this would probably be a cleaner use than our former city shop. And then the economic impact on the community, we'd actually be taking a untaxed property and putting on the tax roll, and also adding several dwelling units in our downtown area, which will certainly have some spin-off benefits for sales tax and purchasing of goods and services within the community. Staff doesn't believe that there's any detrimental effect to any of the nearby properties. As I'd mentioned, there haven't been any calls or comments from the neighbors in a negative manner, other than this one property owner that was curious about the fence line. The relative gain to the health, public safety, and welfare from a denial, don't see that there would be any gain to the adjacent neighborhoods or the public in denying this request. Consistency with our planning documents, it is consistent, but the biggest benefit within all of the discussions that we've had and with our documents, land use plan, is that it's consistent to provide additional housing in the downtown area, and this certainly does meet that. The recommendation of professional staff was to approve the rezoning request, and we carried that request to the Planning Commission, which also recommends to the City Council a recommendation of approval to pass ordinance 2565. The applicant is here this evening if you have any questions for him. Other than that, I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions on the rezoning application?
No, I might just comment that you referred to the committee that was looking at this property and served on that with Councilman Ritter years ago, and this was exactly the kind of use that we were anticipating or hoping for as we were looking at the conditions of it then. So it's good to see that that this is playing out.
Okay. Anyone else? We ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance 2565 as written.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Walker,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Huntermichael.
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to that project.
The easy one, right?
Gonna be a cool one. Thank you.
All right, executive session, we do not have anything, correct? All right, advisory reports, city administrator.
Council, I don't have anything specific. I'd like to answer any questions, but I do want to recognize and compliment you all on the discussion that we had this evening around the incentive policy for residential. I thought it was insightful, it was thoughtful, indicative of a governing body who's well informed and engaged, and asking all the right questions that you would expect of a group that's truly looking out for the best interest of the constituents. And it's been a while since we've had that type of discussion in this forum. And I think you all made great points. I think the audience members made good points that were accounted for in our discussions. And that sort of a policy decisions are very important. And I think you all recognize the weight of all those. And I just want to compliment you, all of you, on that discussion. I thought it was good to hear, good to be part of. So, good job.
Thank you. Any questions for city administrator before we move on to city attorney? All right, city attorney.
Nothing for me.
Good report, thank you. City planner.
The only thing, Mayor, I might add is we
Brad,
will have
if you
a
could Sorry.
I'm just gonna
How long you been here?
I know. I would just say, we are gonna have a full planning commission meeting at our next meeting on the 24th. And it's good to have all these types of projects, and the discussion, as Mike had mentioned, it does help us a lot, city staff level, when we talk to the planning commission members, what your intent is, and it helps us carry that message. So, we do have a full planning commission, so that's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thank you. City engineer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You'd sent out an email about the planning sustainable
Yes.
places. And they had the opportunity to provide comment till next Friday.
Okay.
And I would say one of our neighbors has 140 comments, so we may wanna.
That Baser?
No, Osawatomie.
Okay.
So,
They
and
set the
then-
bar pretty high.
Yeah, yeah. But we scored really well. We,
it was good.
70 out of 100, and there's actually 17 points we weren't eligible to receive anyway. So I think it's looking bright. Let's see, 103rd Street, the KDOT Clarkson project. Just want to give you a heads up that they are planning to be at the May 4th City Council meeting to just kind of present their plans, and they've agreed to be here at major milestones. So I think that's a good step in the right direction with them. And then finally, the Kill Creek signal. I know there've been quite a few questions about that. The initial installation was more of a basic controller. It wasn't, planned to have the sophistication that we're asking it to do now. So that's on order and should be within the month that it'd be installed. So we'll end up with a flashing yellow at that.
Oh, okay.
For westbound.
A little smarter controller will let us do a few more things.
Yeah.
That new controller's within the price that we paid? Or is that additional?
It'll be about $3,000 additional. And that's all I have there.
I would I'd like to point out, I saw our city engineer / director of public works standing beside the hole last night on Kill Creek as they're repairing the water main. Out in the cold, 7 o'clock, 7:30 at night.
Yeah, those guys work hard.
Yeah, we appreciate them, and thank you, Chet, for being there as well. Assistant City Administrator, Brandon, anything tonight?
No report. Excuse me, no report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Council comments. Danny, I'm gonna start with you online. You have anything for the group tonight?
And just that I'd like to thank you, the mayor, and the city council for a discussion that was needed and very well done tonight. And it shows that your heart and your thoughts are in the right place for this city. So, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Danny. Kevin? All right, thank you. Rob?
Clearwave. And I say that and there's a few laughs. Can you just give an update of what you know as far as some of the breakages, some of the things that they've hit? Roughly how many were actually marked, that they hit that were marked where it's kind of their fault versus not marked? I mean, just...
Those are really good questions.
Just
And
kind of
we
generic.
have some information, but it's not exactly complete, and I don't want to present to you anything that's not accurate, because there's the fog of what was going on. There's different sides of those stories. I think we do plan to have Clearwave representatives at our next council meeting. So they will be prepared to discuss some of the difficulties we've had, just boots on the ground difficulties, but also their plans for expansions and timelines and services like that with the council at the next meeting. So maybe if we could get you a good solid answer at that time.
Also, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but I'm gonna go out and ask it because I've been asked. So they are it's all bonded and.
Oh yeah, they have.
And
they have
so
permits.
when they hit a main that was, or a utility line that was marked, they are on the financial hook to reimburse us for the costs we have in it and
Yes,
repairing it.
in general terms, yes. Yeah, that's right. Just like any company doing work, if the line was marked, then there's fault on one party. If the line wasn't marked, then there's not fault. So those are the things that we're really trying to drill down and figure out.
But those costs should be coming back to us at that point if it was a
If-
mark, if it was a marked
If
line.
indeed it was marked and there's an agreement about fault, then yeah. We would generate an invoice for our services at that point and recoup those costs.
And have the safety issues gotten better? I know I called you this week
Well,
on one
I
of
thought
them.
so till you called me. Chet, do you have?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I mean, they worked with us on a road closure over here, that, they ran into a couple things, and before plowing ahead, they called and, make sure that we were okay with what they wanted to do. I would say too, after last night, they called today, I said, we need to have a conversation before we start going crazy, because, they had people working on the other side of town too, and it's like, guys, this can't happen on two sides of town. So they did call, and what happened last night, they were boring parallel to the water line. Those things wander a little bit, and it just caught the edge of the pipe. So they've agreed to, and this is unprecedented for the contractors I've been around, but they're gonna pothole every 35 feet and expose our water line as they go. So they have expressed a sincere interest in doing better.
So they were working with us to be responsible about it and actually do the job right then?
Yeah, my experience at Olathe when Google came through, they had 150 to 200 crews everywhere, and you wouldn't believe the stuff we were finding. They were duct taping up service lines they hit, and it was I've been around worse. So,
so another thing, the mobilization of this level, at your experience, hitting things is not uncommon.
No.
So, no, I appreciate the comments on that. Like I said, some of it I know the answers to, some of it, like the experience you've had reinforcing that is a good thing. And I know there's been comments, but at the same time, some of those people that commented are like myself, and they've already called and set an installation date, because we're so ready to be rid of Spectrum. And I mean, whether it be Zoom and Clearwave, and I've had a talk with Zoom, it really doesn't matter what service I get. The first one that brings me fiber is gonna be the one I go with, because it's so ready to be off of Spectrum, where I'm paying for 400, I'm getting 200, and even then it gets sketchy at times. So it's nice to see it coming to our community and coming the way that we thought it should be under the original contract with RG Fiber. So just some growing pains with it. That's my comments.
All right, thank you, Rob. Lori?
Just good job to the guys that did get the water back going. So if you can make sure you pass out all noise to them, that we appreciate that. And since I was one of them affected by the water, I greatly appreciate it, because I didn't have to cook because I didn't have water. So, it's got its perks every now and then. So the only thing else I was going to mention, a reminder that Dustin's gone already, but I believe the groundbreaking is tomorrow for his facility. And unfortunately, I won't be there, but I hope somebody else will be able to show up. It's a good project. I think we're going to be really excited when that new building is there.
Oh, yeah.
And his other one along Lexington. And, I'm really excited. I think part of the projects that he's done, because they are on Lexington and not all just on Commerce, just really keeps that feel of a town by having those there. And I think hopefully moving forward from here, we can do something downtown that'll kind of add to that, hopefully in the future, But just wanted to remind people about tomorrow, if anybody can make it.
Yeah, just adding on to that, that's 4 o'clock tomorrow, and I think they have Fresnel's and some drink thing too, so I mean, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Kevin?
Just following a little bit on the markings up, we talk about marked or not marked. And I just want to expand that just because it's marked, there's tolerances around marking, and there's accuracy issues with marking and locating any utility. And that's, Mike, when you or Chet, when you talk about, the gray area of this, I just don't want people to think just because there's a yellow or green or blue or whatever color line painted on the ground that still there's some interpretation and tolerance issues. So I attended the Siri board meeting on Tuesday with DeSoto hat on. So just a little feedback from that. I think the report I got there, city sales tax for the year was up about 7% over the prior year. Mike, Brandon, does that feel about right?
Yeah, it feels about, actually, I thought it was higher than that.
I thought it was 9, but I'd have to.
Yeah, I thought it was closer to 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is up by more than what you're ordinarily,
Way more.
ordinarily planning for, and that was indicative of really the same trend through the cities around the county. You know, kind of good news, bad news things. House prices are up, interest rates are up, but volume's up, employment's down, workforce participation's up. So kind of the gist of the CIRI board meeting was the outlook for the Johnson County economy is very, very good. So talk about concerns that some folks may have of recessionary trends or whatever. It's certainly not what is being seen or felt through the metropolitan area or Johnson County in particular. So the mood was good from the CIRI board meeting.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we got a couple projects that are gonna make us a little bit recession-free in this.
Insulated.
Or recession insulated for a while, yeah. You know, shoot, I don't think I have anything. Just follow up on Chet's reminder comment, you know, on that PSP grant application, get some, but it did score really well. Good job on that.
Thank you.
And that's it.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
You going to?
Hey, Brad.
They know half the town, so.
Oh, yeah.
Any,
The ones, every,
2002.
yeah, so 2000,
Well,
2001.
That's one
Yeah,
thing
through
we
those,
did
okay.
do well. I tabled those over the person. But it has.
We're still recording.
Like, be organized.